Welcome to the Oracle of Luna, episode 5 with Bridget Engels. And we have a special guest, Amanda Hillsdale, sexual empowerment witch. Welcome, Amanda.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here. And we're just going to start right in. Okay, so you call yourself a sexual empowerment witch. How did this role come about, and what does this entail?
That is a really great question. So my career in sex education began over a decade ago in the form of a starter kit with a multi-level marketing company. That company has since went out of business, but it was a beautiful experience. As an independent consultant, I would travel to my hostess's home and I would bring my giant bag of adult toy products. I would stand in the middle of the room with everybody's eyes on me, and I would watch people's faces and their body language, and I would just feel their energy and gauge how comfortable they were with the topics that we would discuss. And most of the time, we would openly discuss topics ranging from body confidence and how that felt after becoming a mother. And then we would move into different conversations where we would talk about how to open up a dialogue with your partner about BDSM and role play. It was a really beautiful experience. And during this time, I began to experience even more in-depth conversations during my private checkout time with clients. We would discuss topics as genital armoring or the numbing sensation that some women would experience during moments of intimacy with their partners. And it would manifest in the body with a hypersensitivity to physical touch, triggering negative emotions, which would allow my work to evolve into inviting women into a sacred space for releasing rituals during a full moon.
Hey, Amanda, how did that feel when women actually started opening up to you? Did it trigger something in you, like an empathy or sympathy?
Oh, absolutely. It was really interesting. At the time, I was in my early 20s, and so it was a new experience because for me, I was used to having conversations around my kitchen table with my girlfriends, but
Yeah.
to be able to step into a professional setting and have these conversations from, say, an expert opinion, and to listen to complete strangers completely open up to me about some of the most intimate parts of their being, it was really beautiful. And I feel like it's really beautiful a lot, but there's so much to it. There's so much beautiful depth to it.
Yes. Yeah. And it sounds like a very complex kind of dialogue, actually. Female sexuality is very complex. So I can imagine the conversation, but that's really cool.
Yeah. So as my work started to shift away from in-home parties and more into a position of personal coaching, I felt it was time to rebrand. It was during this time I had went by Amanda Hillsdale Wild Woman, or let me back up a little bit. I had started my career as Amanda Hillsdale toy and intimacy expert. And although that was definitely on brand with where I was when I started, as my brand started changing, as I started to work more in the space of the wild woman archetypes, I felt it was time to rebrand to the Amanda Hillsdale Wild Woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Very interesting. So who has influenced you the most on your journey?
So that's actually a really loaded question because there's been so many beautiful people who have influenced my journey, ranging from my girlfriends who have held space for me as a wife, a mother, a friend, a professional woman, my younger sister holding space for me and teaching me how to profoundly hold space for others and breathe words of affirmation and encouragement to them when they need it. My 3 daughters. My girls are, 14, 13, and 11.
Oh, right.
From their perspective and see, it's actually brought up some really interesting conversations in our home recently where we talk about the female body and we talk about sexuality and the way that it affects us, the way that we process what we see on TV, on YouTube, on social media.
Right.
And it's opened up a really beautiful dialogue with them as well about the body.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that a lot of young women miss. Anyway, in my generation, with dialogues with my mother or grandmother or aunts, just didn't really happen. seems like. So, I had to find out through friends or sisters or,
Mhm.
experience.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. I would also say from a professional standpoint, there's an author that I would love to acknowledge as well. And I'm probably going to butcher her name. I butcher it every time that I attempt it, but it's Dr. Clarissa Paloki Estes, and she is the author of The Women Who Run with Wolves.
Of course. Yes.
Have you heard of her?
Great book. Yes. It's a like iconic book for females and female empowerment.
Absolutely. So, the way that this book came into my life was many years ago. I had started writing a book about my childhood and the broken relationship that I had with my own mother.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because the first 1,000 words, I fell completely apart. I felt lost. I felt broken. And I had a very challenging case of imposter syndrome.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was a really rough time for me. And then
Yeah.
this moment happened where we all have that moment where we have that iconic friend in our life who comes in with those sage words of wisdom. And it happened for me. She sat down with me for a cup of coffee and she handed me the book and she said, "This is going to change everything." And I spent the next several days just poring over the words. And I can't tell you how many times I took my highlighter to that book and how many passages that I took over with the highlighter several times. It was just
Yeah.
such a beautiful experience. And
Yeah, and if some of that is helping you, and if you can help women in the same sort of healing your wounds, healing your sexual wounds, or some of that painful childhood trauma, then it's actually healing for yourself as well.
absolutely. And then learning about the different wild I can't even say it, the wild women archetypes of
Yeah.
women, learning the difference between them and why
Hmm.
we have so many of them.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. So you also do sexual empowerment coaching.
Yes.
What's that all about, and who benefits from your coaching?
So when you hear the word sexual empowerment coaching, it kind of speaks for itself, I feel.
Yeah.
There's something in the solar plex and in the root chakras. And the clients who find me are frequently at a crossroads in life. And typically there's about three different archetypes of clients that come to me. The first one being they find me when they're at a crossroads. Many have experienced the ending of a relationship and feel lost and overwhelmed with being alone.
Right.
They've given so much of the creatrix energy in connection that they have lost a sense of their self. And when the relationship is over, they don't know who they are anymore. And in my work, it's to hold space for them while
Mm-hmm.
they process the grief and find healing and rediscovering who they are again.
Yeah.
One of the second archetype is I tend to work frequently with spiritualists, witches, or healers who fear claiming their gifts. All of her life, she's had this inner knowing of things, and she fears speaking her truth due to religious persecution. People will think I'm crazy if I tell them what I see, hear, feel, taste, or touch. That's a pretty big one that I get really frequently with people. We'll be sitting down for a cup of coffee, and they'll start to open up and they'll start telling me about their life, and then the next thing that always comes out is people will think I'm crazy if I tell them this. I cannot let this out. And
Oh,
it always surprises me when I hear it because it's not
wow.
the people that I would expect to ever say that. On the outside,
Interesting.
they have such a strong exterior, but internally they fear so much of the world being able to truly see them. And it's just interesting to see that in people. And it's not I don't mean that in a reducing sort of way at all. It's
Right.
just it's interesting to watch.
Yes. Yeah. And starting from scratch with a client and watching the how they progress and heal and process is it's got to be very, very satisfying and fulfilling, you know, feeling for you as well.
Absolutely. That's my favorite part. I
Yeah.
like to look at people like a rosebud. And I use a lot of analogies from my garden frequently with people is you start off with this tiny little rosebud and you don't know what color the rose is going to be. You don't know what it's going to look like or the different patterns that are on it. Many of the roses that are in my own personal garden at home, they're multicolored.
Yeah.
It's always interesting because you can walk out there multiple times throughout the day to check on them, but you never know what you're going to get until the rose fully opens and blossoms. And I see a lot of the same characteristics in people. When you touch
Yeah.
a rosebud, you don't really know what you're going to get
Hmm.
or what it is that is about them that's going to open up and blossom until you start working with them. And
Right.
then you watch them and they've reached this ascension, and it's so profoundly moving. You just stand there in awe.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
healing's not a straight path either.
No, it never is for anybody, I don't think.
No, it's very complex. So, as for qualifications, are you have any certifications or
Yeah.
licenses?
Yes, so I have a couple of certifications. My first certification is as a sexual health coach. That is a certification that I received many years ago when I was working for the multi-level marketing company.
Uh huh.
That was really interesting. And then I also have since added to my belt um, an EFT practitioner,
Uh
or
huh.
emotional freedom technique,
Okay.
which is how to tap the meridian lines of the body and
Yes.
helping you to understand how to rewire certain thinking patterns that you have.
Yeah.
Also, the neurolinguistic programming practitioner, and also a womb priestess practitioner.
Mm.
Mhm.
Okay. So you've actually studied at some schools or colleges about to get those degrees.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the witchcraft, the witchy in you. How does that come out in your healing practice?
So, as far as the witchcraft goes, I've been a solitary practitioner of the craft for over 3 decades. My practice started when I was a young child, and that's a whole nother conversation about my
Yeah.
personal. However, the what I would like to add to my business is that we do full moon rituals, and I teach my clients how to work with the energy of their body when it comes to topics of sex magic. How can you use your orgasm to achieve what you want in the world? And if you are incapable of having an orgasm, why is that?
Right.
What is it that is energetically blocking you? Or what is the inner child trauma that is coming up for you that's keeping you from achieving your orgasm?
Right. And so this is all about sex magic.
Mhm.
So maybe in your own words, just kind of describe what sex magic is.
Absolutely. That's a really good question. So, sex magic is when you use your own energy during masturbation, or when you use the energy that is built up between you and a partner or within a group of people. For the sake of explaining it here, I would like to stick just with the masturbation side of it. From a
Hmm.
healing perspective, when you are building the orgasm in your body, when you're listening to the breath in your body and you're present in your own skin, really understanding how your body is moving, really understanding how the energy is building up inside of you, and creating a goal, creating a ritual practice around that. One example that I really enjoy using for this, when it comes to, let's use genital armoring for example. I have I'm just gonna use a non-existent client, so this is not someone who has ever, just
Okay.
as an example. So I have a client who, they are having a very difficult time reaching their orgasm.
Right.
And what has come up for them from their childhood trauma is they are a survivor of sexual assault.
Right.
And they were also taught as a young child, the language around masturbation was, it is dirty, it is gross, it's inappropriate, it's not something you should be doing.
Hmm.
The way that we would use
Sad. That's sad.
it is, and it's actually, this
Huh.
example that I'm using is actually a pretty common one, unfortunately. This is something that I have seen, and listening to their journey and understanding what their body trauma is. The next thing that we do is we look at the way that their body is responding when they start talking about what has happened to them, what has led them to this point. And then we go into what is the desired effect. Obviously, they want to feel more comfortable in their skin. They want to understand that their sex organs are not dirty, they're not inappropriate, and sexual pleasure is possible for them. So then we start building towards a goal.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm so nervous talking.
Right, you're doing great. It's fascinating. I just, there's so much. Gosh, there's just so much. In the media around sexuality and
Mhm.
just kind of a not a perverted, but just kind of neurotic neurosis in this country about sex and sexual health and female sexuality. It's just kind of thwarted in porn and what we see on media and TV. And it's actually,
It's
energetically, it's so vital and so important and so healthy. It's just fascinating to hear how you heal people and try and get them back, back to their own good sense of sexual energy.
right. So we start off with embodiment work. We run our hands over our body, and there's different exercises that we do depending on what topics are coming up. When it comes to issues with or the topic of sexual assault, where on the body do you feel triggered?
Yeah.
When somebody touches the back of your neck, do you tense up? Learning how to touch your body and to start practicing massaging your body and making peace with your body so that the muscles and the tendons don't have that muscle memory response to being triggered in that way. And then from there, we add an additional layer. Now, the next goal, once we have reached that part of embodiment, what is it internally for our self awareness, our own inner critic? What comes up with that? And as we work through those processes, what's next? Well, now we're ready to start talking about actually trying to masturbate, having an orgasm. What's the desired goal? What is the desired effect? And as they start to build, and as they start to get their confidence back, as they start to actually enjoy sex again, then we work towards higher goals. Maybe they are feeling very disempowered at this moment in their life. Maybe they're at a crossroads with their career or their life and they just don't know where they want to go or they don't know what they want to be when they grow up. And that's pretty common too.
Yeah. Well,
How-
stress plays a huge part of sexuality and the sexual flow, energetic flow, of course, as we all know.
Mhm. Yep.
All right. Well, that's very cool. And it's really, this is important work. And especially for people who are survivors of sexual assault or, childhood sexual trauma, it's an important, journey to heal. And I'm just honored to have you on the show and, really love what you're doing out there, Amanda. It's just,
Thank you.
it's really important work that you're doing. So I honor you.
Thank you so much, Bridget. And thank you for having me on your podcast today.
Yeah. So what interests and inspires you the most about what you do?
My inspiration for building and continuing my work comes from my clients' successes. And one of my fondest moments, I have to share it with you because it's just one of those moments where you have to share it.
Okay.
This happened during a coffee and connection call with my client that I'd been working with for a few months. She came into my world right after a really nasty breakup with an emotionally abusive ex-boyfriend. It started off as verbal abuse and then it built to physical violence. And when she finally was able to get away from him, as we were working together, she admitted that she did not trust her gut when she saw the red flags, and she allowed herself to become disempowered in the relationship.
Hmm.
In our time together, we had worked on understanding her empathy versus codependency and
Hmm.
navigating through the heavy shadow work around the childhood trauma that she had experienced.
Right.
Um, one of the topics that came up was at an early age how she was able to give and receive love, which affected her as an adult because she didn't
Yes.
understand. There were some topics that came up around abandonment issues that
Yeah.
happened in her childhood with her parents.
Isn't it interesting? So much happens when we're so open as children that we are like a sponge for
Yeah.
good and bad influences.
Yes, absolutely. And so as we were working together and she started making progress, she started incorporating daily rituals into building a better mindset around her own body,
Uh-huh.
mindset using daily mantras and EFT tapping techniques for her body, and checking with her emotions and practicing her breathing exercises.
Uh-huh.
She learned how to ground and bubble her body to protect her energy as an empath before leaving the house.
Oh,
And on the day,
interesting. What were some of the mantras? I don't know. I'm just curious.
I would prefer not to share them only
Okay.
because they're unique to her.
Yeah.
And
Or anybody. Say, what would be a good healthy mantra for a healthy sexuality?
I am worthy to give and receive the love that I want in the world.
Perfect. I love it.
On that day when we sat for the video chat with our cup of coffee, I just sat in awestruck, watching the glowing and radiant, empowered woman that was sitting across the table from me in the video chat. She finally found herself, and what I enjoyed most about the conversation was she was enjoying her own company. She was able to take herself out on a date and
Oh,
be alone in a room with herself and her thoughts and not feel uncomfortable being alone.
right.
And that was huge. That was so
Huge.
Mhm,
That's excellent. I mean, what a turnaround and what a journey for that person.
mhm.
That's really good example of healing and doing the work, doing the inner work, which is what it's all about. I've been looking at your website, and I see something called the sanctuary. How do you intertwine the ceremony and magic from your online sanctuary with your sexual empowerment practice?
So this is two worlds coming together as one. So as I started to open up about uh, my own spiritual practice, I started having people reach out to me. I apologize for that. I started having people reach out to me for um, they wanted help around ritual work
Mm,
around the phases of the moon. There were people that were wanting to learn how to read tarot cards. They had questions around how to build a book of shadows, what type of herbal remedies that they could use, and spell work. And so it just kind of happened organically to
yeah.
where the sanctuary was built.
Oh,
So there's a book of shadows that has been built. There's a herbal grimoire that is in there as well. There's also journaling prompts, daily journaling prompts
mhm,
that are cycled around the phases of the moon. So depending on if it is a new moon or a full moon, there's different journaling prompts for that as well.
great.
Then there's also what I call sanctuary keys. And these sanctuary keys, one example would be foundations of energy cords. And we talk about energy cords and how they are anchored into the body,
Hmm.
how we can use them for healing, and how we can cut them and replace them with cords that are going to be healing and helpful to our own personal energy so that they don't come back as a vampiric energy.
Right.
Um, so that's
Great.
one of the chords. Our
Yeah, that's really interesting that you brought that up. I was thinking about that today, reading a lot about ancestral magic and ancestors who might be attached to your body, or even just people from your past that are still energetically
Mhm,
lingering. It's
mhm.
it's uh it's really it's hard to cut those cords. And can you give me an example of like how you might, work with a client on cutting a cord?
So cutting rituals typically happen around the full moon. What we do with them is we basically start with a releasing ceremony,
Okay.
and we will sit together, and they will write a letter out to the person, and it's more than just writing the letter. We take a few relaxing breaths, and we feel where the diseasement is in the body. Say there's a diseasement around the lower left hand side of the body, just underneath the heart chakra, or yeah, just underneath the heart chakra. And as we take our breath, we feel where it feels there's a little bit of pressure. And what we do is we take a couple of breaths and we feel that pressure where it's at in the body, and we allow it to move through the meridian lines of our body, and we bring it across the shoulders. We bring it down into the arm, which I'm right handed, so I'm doing this from across the body.
Uh-huh.
And we bring this down the right arm, and then we empower it into the hand, and then we push it down into the pencil. And as we're pushing it down into the pencil, they can write a letter if they want, they can draw clouds, they can scribble, whatever it is that they need to do to push that energy out of their body and into the number 2 pencil and onto the paper.
Ah, interesting. Yeah. Um, That's interesting because really you have to have a sense of visualization to do that kind of work.
Hmm.
But it's very powerful. I've often done some cord cutting spells, or have done, or salt spells for banishment in the dark moon phase. And it's a very powerful experience if you put all your energy into it, for sure.
Hmm.
Awesome. Okay, so how do you see your role as a sexual empowerment witch and sex coach evolving into the future?
Ooh, that's interesting. So I'm naming the year 2021 as my year of regeneration and growth. And through this, I plan on moving into more of a place of teaching and education and mentoring the next generation of leaders in our community. I would love to see more witches out there in the world name and claim their power and name and claim their sexual orgasm. I would love to see that so much more in the world than what already exists.
Yeah. Yeah. And in a way that's healthy and identifies with our, well, each of our unique identities and sense of self, for sure.
Absolutely. Hmm.
Okay, so how would you do that? Like, would you, do that through online coaching sessions,
Yes.
or okay.
Yes. So as of right now, I offer personal one-to-one coaching. I also have the sanctuary, and then I also have programs that are coming up. And one of my next programs that's coming up, this will be the second round of it. The first round took place back in October of last year.
Uh-huh.
We're descending into shadow work, and it's a 30-day program. It's broken up into weekly segments, and it focuses on the elements. So the first week is going to be a water element, and we focus on
Ooh,
the emotions and the inner self-awareness. The
okay.
following week is earth elements and the embodiment, and where do our shadows block our energy and our inner critic, and how does the inner critic rise up, and how it pushes us down when we hear the inner critic. And then we focus on the third week on the air element, which is the mindset and helping you to learn how to identify the shadow when it shows up and how to move through that in a
Mm.
working process. And then the final week is all about fire and body movement. So,
I love it. I
so
love how you're using the elements to work
mhm.
with your magic and your empowerment coaching. This is great. This is so cool. I'm excited for you, and I'm excited for your clients and the people that you work with. So,
Thank you.
yeah. So, lastly, do you have a website or social media that people can find out more about you?
Absolutely. So my website is amandahillsdale.com. I also have, as far as my social media goes, I have a newly created Facebook group, which is the Sexual Empowerment Witches group on Facebook.
Okay, that's the name of it.
Hmm. Yep, it was previously known as the Wild Womb, but I feel that with this new change in the year of regeneration, that it was time to allow that chapter to close because when I had originally started the Wild Womb, I was in a really different headspace, and I
Yeah.
feel that this new group and the new branding definitely identifies on a much deeper level the work that I'm doing. And then I also have Instagram under my same name, Amanda Hillsdale, and
Hmm.
Pinterest.
And I'm just curious, Amanda, um, what life phases what typically the women that come to you, what life phase are they in? Is it just all across the board?
It's typically it's mother and the guardian phase. Well, let me back up a little bit. I
Okay.
identify the different phases of life as maiden, mother, guardian, and crone. I have
Okay.
the fourth phase in there because I feel it's really important to identify once you have raised your babies, but you're not quite to the crone stage, that there is a guardian phase in there as well. And this comes from work from a woman named Angelina Matarbo. I don't
Hmm.
know how to pronounce her last name. Uh,
Hmm.
Mirabito, Angelina Mirabito, and she talks about the guardian phase of life. I feel that that's for my work, the clients that I tend to see most are in their mother phase, the mothering phase, and they're also in the guardian phase. I do have the occasional crone that comes to me. However, primarily it's mother and guardian.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. Okay. So no real young women or no real older women. It's kind of the middle.
It's very few,
Yeah.
and it's not to exclude them. I
Right.
would love to work with younger women as well, but I feel that my work typically it brings in women who are in the mothering and guardian phase.
Mm-hmm. And you're in the Seattle area, Puget Sound, Seattle area.
Yes. So I'm
Okay.
actually a little bit further down. I'm in the Tacoma area.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Um, it's snowing today, and it's Valentine's Day, and just a lot of energetic. There's a new moon in Aquarius, so I'm just really excited to produce this podcast, and really happy to have you on as a guest. And I wish you well in all your future endeavors.
Thank you.
And thank you again for being here.
Absolutely. And thank you again so much for having me. I appreciate your time and your energy so much and for allowing me to be here on your podcast as a guest.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I'm just going to sign off here. May you walk with the goddess and keep on witching.
Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.